Welcome back to Two Guys in the Bible. I brought my iPad because I'm prepared this morning. Cody didn't. So now we look unprofessional. We look like we're just two guys that just come up here and...
I didn't know we were two guys in an iPad. Dad joke.
Dad joke. Oh, man. Well, we're back. Welcome. We're glad that you're with us. We're glad you clicked on this video to learn more about what does the Bible say about fill in the blank. Maybe we'll do a little bite-sized theology, Cody, because Cody was chastising me.
Chastising.
Because
I was just making a statement.
My ADD, where I like to get bored with a certain topic and then want to move on too quick. And Cody was like, hey man, we need to do bite-sized theology because we started that and didn't. We just stopped. So we're going to try to do both. Right?
Yeah. I'm just different because it took me 3.5 years to get through the book of John. And so I just plowed through it, even though it was difficult. Not saying you would not do that. I'm just saying that.
Well, my next sermon will be finishing Mark. And it's been a 1.5 years that we've been going through Mark. So when it comes to exposition, I'm in it till we're done. But other things, I get bored. I want to move on. So anyway.
Did you just say you get bored with theology?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No.
I feel like that's what you said.
I feel like that's the implication of what I just said, isn't it? Ideas. Anyway, bite-sized theology. So we already know what question we want to dive into today, here in a little bit. That's going to be, what does the Bible say about God not giving someone more than they can handle?
Right. Which, if you notice, all of these things that we're talking about are what I kind of call Christian cliche. They're things they're cliches. They're things that they seem like ingrained, or they are ingrained in the Christian language and Christian idea, and yet they don't find them, they're not that clear in the scriptures, right? They're not just laid out like people think they are, or they're just not in the scriptures at all.
Yeah, there's probably some people that would think that that's a verse.
Yes. Well, I know they interpret a certain verse that way, but yes, they would think that it's like a thou shalt. God. And here's the thing I was thinking about on the way over here. You're making a statement about God.
Yeah.
God does not. Whoa. Hold on a second. There are a lot of things God doesn't do.
God does not contradict himself.
Right. God does not lie. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are very clear in the scriptures. This is not. And I think what we're dealing with in a bigger, kind of more umbrella in this subject is just God's sovereign, providential working out in people's lives as individual lives, right? Like how he allows and restrains and gives in certain people, what we would probably put under the category of providence.
Yeah. So there's your bite-sized theology.
Providence. Which is essentially, for my own simplistic mind.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I didn't write an 800-page book.
Providence is the thing of when God does the thing.
Where he does the things about the things. But legitimately, it is God's hand orchestrating all of life. It has to do with his sovereignty, his power, his omniscience, his omnipresence. I mean, all of those things are involved, his wisdom, but he's planning and orchestrating actively in life. Right?
See,
he's
you're
not
talking about your simplistic brain. Like, my definition's simpler than that.
Oh, okay, well.
Whoa, Mr. Systematic Theology. Like, Dr. Cody, Dr. Coleman over here. Like, whoa.
I should write a 900-page book to beat Piper.
Usually I'm the one that gives these ridiculous, elaborate definitions, and he's like, hey, let's bring it down a notch. And I think it's the opposite right here. I'm like, okay, we would... Cody and I both believe, and I believe the Bible teaches this clearly, that God ordains whatsoever comes to pass. He's declared the end from the beginning. Providence is Him working in time in His creation and through His creation to bring about that which He has ordained from all of eternity.
He's not setting like a timer or a clock.
Yeah.
And then He just says, okay, when that's done, then I'll show back up again, as if He's just like taking His hand off of life, if you will, in creation, and just said it's all going to just, like He set the puppets up to do all they're going to do, and He's just left them. That's not, no, He's actively.
Let's use this as an example. God ordained, because of His divine will and purposes, for you and I to be here this morning to record this show, right? In His providence, He had us, He woke us up this morning and allowed us both to get here safely, right? To use this recording device and these microphones that somebody in His providence created and made. Like, everything is part of the providential hand of God. As Abraham Kuyper said, there is not 1 square inch, I'm paraphrasing, in this universe over which God does not cry mine.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, like, when did the printing press?
Oh, yeah.
When was that, like, made and begin flourishing?
Right before Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church door.
So then the Reformation happens, and all this evangelical literature begins to flood to common people.
Yeah.
And
Bibles were put in the hands of people in their language.
So it's providence. It's God.
Yeah.
It's God orchestrating those things. So, with that being said, when you take the phrase, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, you're talking about His providence. It's God doing something in an individual's life, right? Mm-hmm. And what you're making the statement is this God of the Bible will never give this individual any more than they can handle in order to keep going in life, keep going in the Christian life. I think God is wise enough to know what everyone can handle.
Sure.
Right?
Well.
And some people, here's what I look at this a little bit like this when it comes to individual, like, sanctification. There are a lot of people that need more than others. Right? They need a little bit more. Some need a little more suffering.
Obviously.
Yeah, right. Some people need some more suffering for their sanctification than others do. Right? For humbling and for things. So He knows all those things. But this statement is often used when? When do we always hear this thrown out all the time?
When we're experiencing a trial or pain or something bad has happened in our lives.
If CA had cancer and he's real sick, and I go to visit him in the hospital because I'm a good friend, and I go visit him in the hospital, and I walk in and be like, "What are you doing in here? Why don't you man up or something?"
Sissy.
But I walk in and I say, and I was to sit down, and I want to comfort him, right? I want to comfort you. I want to encourage you because you got cancer. Maybe you're a little discouraged. You're human, right? Sometimes we're all about the sovereignty of God and providence of God until it touches us.
That's true.
So
that's true.
So you're a little discouraged, and I say, well, don't worry, brother. God is not going to give you more than you can handle. Let's just pause and let's just talk about real life experience at that moment.
I would rebuke you right from the hospital bed, but anyway.
But you're discouraged and you're thinking, oh, yeah. Well, no, here's the reality. You already have something that you can't handle. Cancer.
Yeah.
Like, you can't handle that.
No. That's why it's called cancer.
Right? So you have already been stuck you're already put in a position of something you can't.
Helplessness.
Yes. And so that just throws it. And if I look at the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, I see men. Joseph's life. Like, you preached one sermon about Joseph's life and the entire thing. I'm just kidding.
It gives me a hard time.
But then Paul's life, and you read the Psalms about David. I mean, you think David could handle running around in the wilderness and his own son wants to kill him?
By himself.
It's like I just think that all of the Bible and all of history in God's people, they're constantly put in positions they can't handle.
Yeah. Let's just get, maybe I'm reluctant to say this because this kind of puts an end to the conversation. We just got started.
It's a 10-minute video.
I think the reason we started with providence is because the idea that God would not give you more than you can handle. Folks, we can't handle anything.
Yeah.
I woke up this morning because God decreed me to wake up this morning. I couldn't even wake up on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Without God. I couldn't even sit here and talk and breathe without God putting breath into my lungs. Mm-hmm. So the idea that God would never give me something more than I can handle is just it's not scriptural in the least. Now,
he said we can do nothing.
We can't
apart from him.
Nothing. That means breathe, walk, wake up.
And he's talking, spiritually speaking, in that particular passage.
Now,
but
let me answer this question or talk about this for a second. Does God get does God sometimes put us in difficult situations for whatever reason, for His glory, for our sanctification, whatever, like you were talking about, to teach us something and then to bring us out of it? Yeah, but that's still more than we can handle. Everything's more than we can handle. So
it's a very man-centered statement.
Yeah.
God's not going to give you more than you can handle, as if you're going to take care of whatever thing you're... And that's a very self-reliant American phrase, right? Of this, pull myself up by the bootstraps. It's a very Western thing. We're just like, we just get it, right? Which there's a lot of good in that we have this, we go after things.
Yeah, we are responsible.
Yes.
For things.
But that's a very... God's not going to give me personally anything that I just can't. I can handle it. So the things that God will give me, I can take care of.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that when you have cancer. You can't do it when a loved one is lost. You can't do it when you're getting persecuted for the sake of the gospel. There's many things that we cannot handle. But what God will do is keep His people.
Yeah.
And so I think what some people may be trying to say with that is that God's not going to put you in these situations and not keep you.
And abandon you.
And not abandon you.
Right.
Not keep you and help you endure. Which would be a much better... but usually it's meant, don't worry.
You'll get through this.
Yeah.
Now, what I don't mind hearing, and I've even said this before to people, when they are going through a trial or through something, I say, some people say, God's got this. Well, that's a factual statement.
Yeah.
Or God is in control. That's a factual statement. Now, to say that, God's not going to give you more than you can handle, that's just not, it's not a biblical idea.
What God will do is He will work all things for His purpose and for your good. He will keep you. He'll help you endure. Yeah. He'll do all of those things. But He is most likely and definitely going to put you in positions where there are going to be tons and tons of things for this purpose. As he says to Paul, as Paul says. Let's just read it. It says two guys in the Bible, right?
It is.
2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8. For we do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia, for we were utterly burdened beyond our strength. Okay? More than we could handle.
Yeah.
That we despaired of life itself.
Despaired of life itself. We're like ready to die.
Yeah, it'd be better off.
Yeah.
Death would be better.
Yeah.
Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead.
There it is.
So, God is most certainly going to put you in positions that will make you dependent upon Him. That is, hey, I know individuals, and the seasons that they had to go through, sometimes it is excruciatingly painful. I mean, I have an individual that I know, it was like 1, 2, 3 things within a matter of 6 to 9 months that was just like bang, bang, bang. And
yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it was beyond our strength that person was despairing of life itself. And so it's not an easy thing.
No.
But it is a purposeful thing to make us dependent upon the Lord. And so...
And I would argue that we read this in Acts chapter 12. About the time Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church, he killed James, the brother of John, which was one of the brothers, sons of Zebedee, with the sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. So, God will never give you more than you can handle. James was killed. And eventually, all the other disciples would become martyrs. Peter, it is believed that Peter was crucified, and at his request, he was turned upside down because he did not believe he was worthy of dying in the same manner in which his Lord did. So he requested to be crucified upside down. All of them were martyred and killed for the faith. Except for John, he was exiled to the island of Patmos, where he would eventually die. And then church history is the first century church faced horrible persecution.
Right.
Emperor Nero would soak Christians in oil or tar, tie them to stakes, and use them as lamps to light up his dinner parties. He would light them on fire and use them as human lanterns to light up his dinner parties. I mean...
So, this may sound really silly to say, but I just think of... I don't think we should not at all ever judge our theology on experience. But you cannot ignore experience. And so if you're thinking about
that's providence.
If you're thinking about first century, and you're walking down this lit street of bodies, and they're still alive, and you shout up to the oil-soaked human candle and say, hey, don't worry, God won't give you more than you can handle. That sounds absurd.
I'd say it's blasphemous, and it's hard-hearted, and it's not understanding the reality of the situation.
It's theological malpractice, because you're not doing any.
That's good. Theological malpractice.
Malpractice.
See, now who's a seminary?
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that, man. That is good.
Because you're not doing any. You're not doing any of the work. You're not, and you're not speaking real truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Hit your knees and pray. William Tyndale, who translated the Bible into English, right? Thank God for William Tyndale, was burned at the stake for translating the Bible into English, right? Now, could you imagine, like, he's working tirelessly to get the Word of God into the English language, knowing it's going to cost him his life, and being burnt at the stake. You understand how they did that, right? They didn't soak you in gas and throw a match. They started at your toes, and the fire worked its way up your body. So you were conscious as this was happening. Conscious as this was happening. Don't worry, William.
Was it not his first? It was his first. He had one, and I don't know if it was Old or New Testament completed and done, and it went down in a ship that sunk.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't worry, William. God won't give you more than... I mean,
Oh, man.
it just sounds silly to... But here's why it's so easily said in our culture. Because we haven't really experienced anything like that would make it so absurd to say.
And people don't study who God is.
Right. But I do want to, because we haven't brought up where this idea comes from. So let's say that real quick.
All right.
So 1 Corinthians 10 is where this whole, when people are saying this is the passage of Scripture that they would, and because it's an older phrase, been around a long time, would you look up the King James? Because that's where a lot of people, this thing's been around for so long that most of them are probably going to find it there. But I'll read it the ESV. No temptation.
What verse was it?
1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. That's where most people stop. But there's a lot more in the rest of this verse. Because so they say, they only take this part of the verse. No temptation has overtaken you that's not common to man. They say God won't give you more than you can handle. Well, listen to the rest of the verse. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, He will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. So why is it not beyond your ability? Because
God.
of God's faithfulness to give you a way of escape and cause you to endure.
Yeah.
But specifically, this is dealing with idolatry in the context, sexual sins, so on and so forth. So it seems to me that it is dealing with sin, not overall life hardships, trials, sufferings. But even if it is dealing with a big, broad, and painting a big, broad brush, generally speaking, it still does not, you still can't get that out of the verse.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'll just read the King James Version for you that stick with that. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. Right? So, again, same meaning, same thing, just different wording, older language. But yeah, it is God, who not only does He providentially bring about situations in our lives, but He is also the one who providentially, if we get out of it, it's because He providentially brings us out of it Himself. He's not giving it to us. Okay, I want to see you handle this, buddy. Mm-hmm. Like He's doing it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so at the end of the day, God does give us more than we can handle.
Yeah.
That's so.
Yeah, because the point is to be reliant upon Him. And when He says beyond your ability, it's we have the ability to, as Christians, go to Him and endure and escape. We have that access. That is where our responsibility is. That's where we're able to go to Him.
Yeah.
And so it's just, again, in all of these things we've kind of dealt with, except for the women pastors at the beginning, which is extremely clear. But even in that, we can talk about women discipling other women. So there's grains of truth, but when we simplify these things and just make blanket statements with these without any sort of real work done, we can do a lot of damage.
Right.
And do a lot of...
And I keep thinking about, maybe this will be another episode, but, the verse that everybody loves to quote, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Mm-hmm. Well, what context is he saying that in? Mm-hmm. He's saying that in the context of terrible persecution and suffering and pain. He's not talking about that when he's trying to open the lid of a pickle jar or trying to win a baseball game or something like that. He says that yes, God has brought me to this in His providence in this terrible time of suffering and anguish and pain, but I will get through it because of God. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Because of Christ, I will get through this one way or another. Not because of me. Anyway. And at the end of the day, if God does give us more than we can handle, which He always does, and we don't get out of it, well, as His children, that's still not a terrible thing. We get to go be with Him in glory.
Amen.
So,
speaking of glory, we should today seek to do all things, whether we eat or whether we drink. We should do it all to the glory of God.